This is a transmitter, a little 1-watt transmitter that we hook a underwater microphone to called a hydrophone.
Okay.
And it broadcasts the signal through that antenna to our receiving station, pulled back on the ice a little ways.
And you will have a number of these set up when you're tracking the migration?
Right. What we'll do is we'll put out what we call an array of these sonobuoy hydrophone setups.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll use surveying equipment and survey them in very precisely along the edge of the lead, and we simultaneously record the signal from all of the entire array at once, and that way we can measure the difference in delay time from the calls from individual animals as they go by.
It's not clear to me quite how you track. If you can pick up from, you said 17 kilometers away,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got another one up here, how far apart do you space these? Another kilometer? Or?
Yeah, about a kilometer apart,
Okay.
about half a mile.
How do you know that whale has gone past this one and is going past the next one, or do you know those things?
That's the $100,000 question.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce myself. My full name is John Craighead George. I'm 70 years old. I was born back east in mid-state New York. Lived there through actually a little further south than that, through my high school years, and then moved to live with my mother's family, the Craighead family in Moose, Wyoming. And I went to college there, actually in Utah State, in Logan, Utah, which is near there, and studied terrestrial biology and got into mountaineering, river running, backpacking, and all that sort of thing. And I come from a family of biologists. My mother's a writer. She wrote children's books, and my father was a professor of wildlife, and my uncles were research biologists, studied the Yellowstone grizzlies and were falconers and that sort of thing. So anyway, and then once I finished my degree, I had some friends that had gone to Alaska, and I was very interested in that. And in 1977, I was offered a job at Naro as an animal caretaker. So that's and that changed my life. But anyway, that's the basic introduction. I finished my degree in wildlife biology, and then later finished a PhD in marine science, marine biology, essentially on bowheads. Yeah. More importantly, I met Sid here in 1985, and we got married in 1990 and started a family here and raised 2 boys, Luke and Sam. And Sam was actually born here, and they went through high school and were involved. And we got out a lot hunting and fishing and traveling and doing all sorts of things involved in whaling to some extent, and just sort of living the Iñupiaq North Slope called lifestyle, I guess. So there you go.
I'm Alex Kaleak Sr. I'm the Malik of Anga Crew that we just started last fall. And this is my wife, the captain's wife, Diedre.
My name's Diedre, and the mom of Alan and Alex Jr. and Courtney.
Don't forget the one on the way.
And one on the way in the summer. Yeah.
I hear, is it, do you know the sex yet?
A girl.
A girl, okay.
We tried to say a boy, and Courtney was like, nope, I told you. So yeah, we have a girl due this summer, after whaling season.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I started off as an animal caretaker, not for the wildlife department. And then in 1980, Tom and I had developed a friendship at Gnarl over the 3-year period. And he hired me to help with bowhead whale research, anatomy, physiology work. He had some money to help understand the animal and do some very basic, like I said, anatomical, physiological studies. So he needed somebody to help get him with logistics. And that led to going to Point Hope the following year to do harvest sampling, which led to a full-time job with the Department of Wildlife Management in 1982, I think it was. And so I had the main involvement we had then was doing the abundance work, bowhead whale census, trying to figure out how many there are. And those were pretty remarkable years in many ways. But to answer your question, so bowhead whale research, doing the abundance work, counting, and the anatomy, physiology, health research, health studies, that sort of thing. And then some caribou work, fisheries in summer, mostly whitefish, survey inventory work all through the backcountry here is fantastic. And a fair amount of sea ice. I got involved with sea ice researchers, with some of the old timers, Lou Shapiro, later Richard Glenn, Hyoiken, etc., and Andy Mahoney. But I got very interested in sea ice. In order to work and safely operate the whale census, you have to understand sea ice. So worked with them and a lot of the senior captains, and then got involved in harvest documentation work and a million other things, I guess. But those are some of the main ones that come to mind. And a lot of, well, sort of initially informally realized I was doing indigenous knowledge research, and actually got into, we actually published some work on that. But initially it was just simply going to experts who knew the most about whale behavior, migration timing. Well, it was local hunters, so we didn't call it traditional knowledge or anything at the time. But anyway.
The name of our whaling crew is Anga Crew, and that's my Eskimo name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's been Kaleak Crew. It's usually a crew is kind of after your last name, is what it mostly was. But there was a Kaleak Crew already, and so I just chose my Eskimo name, Anga Crew. It kind of, we got the design off of my grandpa's whaling crew flag, and we just added on a couple more marks.
And change the color.
And change the color. Yeah, there's a few. First, it started when I would drive my Aka around and take her around town, and she'd always tell me stories of when my Appa was a whaling captain. And he whaled before there was quota, I guess. Before they gave us rules and a limit of how many whales we could catch. My Aka told me, your Appa would always catch 2 to 3 whales a year. And you know, I thought that was pretty awesome, you know. The one story she told me, my Appa them caught a whale, and they were just getting done with it, dividing it into the shares for all the crews to take home, and one of his crew members saw another whale coming, So we went to the edge of the ice where the water was. He waited for that whale. That whale came up. He got that second whale before they even done with the first. And I thought that's pretty amazing, you know. Those old folks are really tough back then. I don't think anybody would be able to do that these days, you know.
They're tired after the one
yeah,
whale.
Yeah, so. My Aka told me a bunch of stories of my Appa. That, he was one of them I looked up to. And then the other one is Oliver Leavitt. The one, he's the one that I went whaling after my uncles with. That's who I stayed with whaling after that. Oliver Leavitt, probably about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he taught me a lot of stuff and what you whale for. You know, you whale for the people. You don't whale for yourself. You do it for the people to feed the people. And he taught us pretty good. And just want to keep whaling.
What was my favorite part about working with hunters? I found it so interesting to kind of see the world. There are different ways of knowing. And for instance, in '82, the first study I went out on that wasn't bowhead related was there was no information on the fish harvest in Iñupiaq. Nobody had published anything on it, and because of the expansion of the oil fields, needed to document that in part to protect resources and see if there's changes occurring, those sorts of things. So I went out with a family, the Lampe family, and we went to their camp and they were targeting Iñupiaq, the big broad whitefish, and had a camp there and they were drying them on the rack. And I had just come up from Wyoming where the target fish are trout, and what most fishermen did if they caught a whitefish was throw it up on the bank. Now our family actually did eat them, but most people, almost all fishermen and fly fishermen and that sort of thing in Wyoming, thought that whitefish were inedible and invasive almost. Even they were endemic, they're naturally did occur there, but they interfered, they thought, with trout fishing. Anyway, so I got to the Lampe camp, and here, you know, all the beautiful pipsy hanging, you know, beautifully filleted. And the bycatch, I looked over, it's like there was a couple like pink salmon and a couple lake trout. And they said, well, yeah, we don't, not that interested in those. It was a complete reversal. I was like, wow, okay. And that happened over and over. Very different worldview. You know, I was into wilderness and going into the wilderness. Backpacking in Wyoming. We go into wilderness areas, designated wilderness. And that was the coolest thing. Came here and nobody knew what the term was. It's like, wilderness? You mean back here? No, that's not. I mean, that's where we go. That's where our ancestors lived, and it just didn't connect, you know, because if you didn't grow up in an urban, semi-urban, lower 48, you know, and I love that, just the stretching and seeing things differently, often in a very pragmatic way. But it really helped me grow intellectually too, I guess. And I love that sort of contrast in culture with that, and learning new things, of course. a whole new skill set on the sea ice and traveling on the tundra and navigating before GPS. That was a trick going inland. Wow, you know, all these fantastic new things.
It was quite a responsibilities, you know. You first off, you're responsible for your guys on your crew, you know. If anything happens to them, it falls on you because you're the captain. And just gotta be a good leader, you know, and try to lead by a good example so your crew could follow you in a good example. And pretty much, yeah, gotta be tough on them once in a while, you know. Can't always be fun and nice, but part of being a captain.
Usually when the guys go out, we at least make sure they're eating, make sure they have everything they need packed to go down that way. While they're down there, we communicate, you know, if they need us to cook or if they're going to cook down there. Pretty much make sure they're fed and make sure they're staying warm, and especially if the kids are going too, the kids are staying warm. Yeah. Pretty much like the mommy duties. Yeah.
It's a long process. There's a lot of stuff you gotta get and a lot of stuff you gotta get ready. So the first, yeah, it's a lot. All I could say is quite a bit.
We're very thankful that everyone from Anga Crew came to be with, from OLC Crew came to be with us on Anga Crew, so they knew how to get ready. It was just us getting our own things now. So it was a lot of ordering things and buying new things and still buying new things.
Mm-hmm.
But all the people are pretty much the same. And then it involved, like, my family that hasn't ever really been a part of Whaling Crew until I got with Alex, and that's when I learned everything about whaling. And so now it's my hope to teach my siblings and my side of the family too how to be a whaling crew.
Yeah, it was a real, I hate to admit it, but I think a lot of us, at least then, and maybe still now, come up with a tad of arrogance. I think we know more than we do, and so I really had to rewire things. I was just looking at a note I took. I learned that intelligence is equally distributed, but opportunities aren't. So there's a lot of brilliant people that never went to college. I remember Tom Albert Sr. saying, like, about Harry Brower Sr. He said, who really helped with our whale census program, he said, if he was where he had come from in Maryland at a university, he would be a major professor. Here he was one of the senior whale hunters, and he worked as a carpenter. Brilliant guy and very clear. When we talked to him, he told us exactly what we needed to do to improve our abundance estimates of bowheads and that sort of thing. And then along those lines, I remember when I was doing harvest studies, sometimes I learned to reverse situations, kind of like I mentioned earlier. And you go to a prominent hunter and they say, no, I don't want to be part of your harvest survey. And it's like, well, this is important for the community, but then I said, okay, reverse it. Imagine an Iñupiaq researcher going to New York City and asking the CEO of a major corporation, tell me about your financials, how much money you made, where you made it, how did you do, where you invested, this, that. And they would go, well, first of all, you wouldn't get in the door, but I went, oh yeah, I'm talking to the equivalent of people like that senior whale hunter, one of the best fishermen in the area, or whatever it was, a trapper, and you learn, okay, yeah, put things in perspective here. And then you learn, once you spend your own time out there. I remember when I was in charge of the whale camp, oh my, that, we were camped on the ice at whale counting camp. You realize you're responsible for the safety and of a lot of people, and in our case, running a project efficiently, keeping spirits up, all these things, and you really, I would go, you really understand the, spring whaling in particular, how intellectually demanding, and that years and years of experience you need to make good decisions. I used to go to, Lloyd Leavitt, Harry Brower Sr., Kenneth, Nate, Nalukataq, and I'd say, okay, we're camped here. It looks like there's a big crack. If the east wind blows, when do you think we should pull back, or do you think this is safe, or whatever? And they try to explain things, and eventually, I remember Eugene Brower said, "We've taught you what we know. You understand the basic principles here. You've got to make your own call." And that was like, we trust you. That was a big change in my life. A big incident, or important event, I should say, in my life. Anyway, so that's part of it, and and I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of cultural errors, said things I regret, did things that were silly, but it's a pretty forgiving place here. If, I don't know, there's some kind of ESP that, okay, this guy can be an idiot, but I think he's generally cares about the community. He likes living here, raising a family, or whatever, and we'll give him a pass.
About the same, I think, around the last few weeks, April, going into the couple weeks of May, that about the 15th of May is when it really thaws out and it starts to get really unsafe. So try to get it in between the 2-3 years. There's quite a bit. The ice is probably the biggest thing that I've seen change over the years. Because when I started at a young age, you'd see ice, I think about 10 to 12 feet thick. They're that thick, and these days you barely find like 5 feet thick, The ice has changed a lot, and back then, we'd end up at the lead, it'd probably be like 4 to 5 miles out. Now these days you probably get just a little over a mile.
So that's cell service kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're that close.
Yeah, it changed. The ice has changed a lot, and that's probably the most big thing is the ice and the weather and change. Yeah, there's been a few, I was sitting there and we were watching the ice come in, and once it made contact, it wasn't stopping. It was coming in really quick, and we had to throw things in the boat, throw the boat on the sled. It didn't really tie stuff down good enough, but just enough to get out of there, It had to scramble. The ice will pile up real quick. There's no stopping that, for sure.
Yeah, well, just looking, we were just looking at this in 1852. The first pulse of whales was the 23rd of April. And now it's typically earlier. So if you look at harvest dates of whales, they are about a couple of weeks earlier. And we think the migration is probably 2 weeks earlier now. Probably because of less ice cover across the range from the Bering Sea up through the Chukchi on the migration route. And there's a lot more whales than there were 50 years ago. They've almost tripled in number. From an estimated 5,000 whales, once we made the adjustments, there were probably about 5,000 bowheads in the late 70s, and somewhere between, I don't know, 17 to 20,000 now. Last good estimate was 17,500 aerial survey, but there are definitely whales outside their research, their survey area. Anyway, so notice that earlier migration, a lot less multi-year ice. It was a lot of old pakaliup, the kind you can mine for fresh water. That's almost gone now. Like this year, I haven't seen any yet. There's occasionally some floats in, but it was a lot, big expanses of it. And it was, cooler, although the spring temperatures haven't changed dramatically like fall. It's still it's pretty chilly today. We've had a cold last couple weeks. We're below normal. But yeah, so the old ice is gone, earlier migration. In some years, pretty early breakup. By the end of May, you've got to be off the ice. Whereas one year we counted to the 14th of June, if you can imagine. We're out there. We still had ice. And the beach was clear of snow, but and that was a lot of it because it was multi-year ice. It was ice that was going to make it through the summer anyway. It's just whether it was still hanging on. And of course, I've seen the changes. It was all skin boat hunting initially, and they throw an outboard, a 20 horse on the skin boat after they struck a whale, sometimes to tow it or chase it. So that's really changed. There's more, people don't camp as long as on the ice as they used to. And we went from camping to commute, watch, set up a warming tent, build a perch, but not camp on the ice. Some of the, and I know some of the whalers will go out for briefer periods because they have to work and things have changed so much.
I'm Joseph Leavitt. My parents are Luther and Cora Leavitt, both are deceased, and I come from a large family, and our family is a whaling family because my father had a whaling crew started in 1955, and he has passed that down to my brother Luther, and so Luther passed it down to me. So Leavitt Crew, which I'm captaining now, is it's all about family. We work together as a family. I don't take care of all of the bills myself. Everybody, they know. I don't even have to ask them. My family knows that I need help, and So we work together as a family. We try to keep our family together. And I was born and raised in Barrow, been hunting all my life, subsistence hunter. I grew up in the fish camps in the 1960s and way before natural gas. You see that boat down there by the cleaners, that's upside down. My father and his brother, they built that, and it was my uncle's boat. That's what they used to use to haul coal from Cougar, just past Beard Bay. So I got to ride in that, and then when I first came aware, there were still dog teams around Barrow in the early 60s. There was dog teams there, and there used to be a lot of dogs, but Barrow was small, and I used to watch a lot of hunting, and even before 1972, there was lots of sports hunters up here. They had 185s land all over the place. You know Ugluk Street right by Charlie Edwardson's house? That's where they all used to land, right on the tundra, way before the airport. So I watched that before they got it regulated in 1972. So I grew up all in Barrow, and I really enjoy Barrow people, and hope I'm helpful in this interview. Thank you. That's the way to be. If you're going to be a hunter, you gotta help each other out. Even if you gotta help somebody if they're in trouble or if they're lost, and that's the way to be up here. You gotta help somebody out any way you can. You know, if you're able. But the current is very important. That's one of the things that they taught me. If I got doubt, I still do my sounding on the line. I let the hammer hit all the way down to the bottom. Because I was taught when the current starts, sometimes there'll be no current for the longest time, but when it's going to start, it starts at the bottom. And it rises up 2 days, 2 days, 2 days, and then finally it's going to hit the top. That's Takabak, that's a current. That's what we watch out. That's what we can monitor the current, which is because we got no tide gauges up here yet. There's people that shown me tide gauges, but I want to know what's going on in the ocean right here, especially on the other side of the point. Our people, our people before us, they really understood the currents, and because they lived out in the ocean, and that's where they do their hunting, and it's just been passed on, and I'm hoping observations like this will at least record some of the ways that we use our environment to let it work for us or not.
A couple pieces of advice, I guess. Of course, advice to outside researchers: take your time, listen, be respectful, be patient, work together and have fun. I mean, that's what I think we had so much, it was fun. Everybody enjoyed it. There was a good chemistry and that sort of thing. And then one thing I learned is it took me a long time to realize that there's this amazing Iñupiaq sharing system of food, and it's the same with knowledge. If you're given some knowledge about whatever, you're expected to give something back, share what you know. It's like, bingo, okay. So to research, to be prepared to give something back. And then in a general sense, I kind of made the point that biology and science is fairly straightforward. Working with people is hard. Biology is easy. Working with people is hard. And ultimately, in terms of conservation, and I think this is a beautiful example of the bowhead whale management program is one of the great conservation success stories. Bowheads have done well, the hunters are happy, but it comes down to working collaboratively, and that's forgotten. In so many of these clashes, I know they're very complicated situations around the world. This one may have been more solvable in some ways, but gee, got to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's often missed, biologists and user groups aren't on the same page in many cases. Or, yeah, and so, and be curious, I guess. A lot of what I've done is driven by a really honest fascination with the natural world and cultures and working with people, and make it, enjoy it. So.